All right, so this week we're going to learn how to play a really spacey, dreamy sounding lead that's a lot of fun to play, and it's really simple. This has got a lot of practical application as well. So even if you don't like this style, there's a lot of ideas from this lesson that you can take and use in other things. I always hope that you get that out of all of these lessons. You take ideas and then you apply them to whatever you want to use them for. So we're going to be using 3 chords in this, 3 basic chords, and then 1 scale to create everything. So it's really simple from a theory perspective, and it's also simple from a technical perspective. In this video, I'm going to break down everything that I played in the intro note for note. I'll show you how to play it all. However, if you'd like to download the tablature and the MP3 jam track so that you can practice playing all of this stuff, you can get those things by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP449. All right, so let's talk about tone. Now, I don't usually go through tone or amp setups, and that's usually because I'm just playing straight. There's not really much to say, but this week I am using some delay. I'm not playing through an amplifier. In fact, everything is going, it's just coming out of my laptop. I have a MacBook Pro, but I have an audio interface that's giving me the delay and the amp emulator and everything. And that's a Universal Audio Apollo. And I'm using the Apollo x4 or X4. That's the one that I use. You can use any of the Apollos, and get these effects. But basically, I'm using the Fender Tweed amp emulator, which is a built-in plugin. And then there's it's called the Galaxy Echo that I'm using, which gives me this kind of bouncy triple effect. It's almost like a triplet. And you wouldn't think that a bouncy delay like that would work on something that's really slow and spacey like this. But what it allows you to do is create a lot of sustain. And you can hear there's almost a wave in the sound. It sounds a little out of tune, which I just kind of like that. That's all coming from that effect. It's the Galaxy Echo. There's some reverb on there as well. And I'm using the plate reverb effect from that. But anyway, that's what I'm using. You don't have to go out and buy delay pedals. You could do this on an acoustic guitar and it's going to sound great. I just wanted to go through that in case anybody wants to try and simulate it. That's kind of what's going on. But here's the echo. Or the delay. Okay, so the song is in the key of G, and as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be playing 3 chords and only 1 scale. And so the only scale that's used is the G major scale for this. And most of the time, we're not even playing a scale. Most of everything we're going to be doing is chord shapes, simple triads, just picking the notes out of triads. But I did want to just kind of start with that the 1 scale that I'm going to use is going to be that G major scale. And the reason the G major scale works, even though there's 3 chords, is those 3 chords are in the G chord family. So we have a G chord. The second chord we're going to play is an A minor chord. So we go from the 1 chord to the 2 chord, and then we play the 5 chord, which is a D7. So G, A minor, and D7. Those are our chords that we're going to be working with. All right, so let's take a listen to what the first part of this, just so you can get the sound in your ear, and then we'll talk it through. Okay, so the first thing that I play goes like this. Now, what is this? This is coming from, remember our first chord is a G chord. So I'm thinking about the G triad right here, using the D shape. Think of the D shape from first position. Now this goes back to all the cage stuff that I'm always talking about. C-A-G-E-D. I'll put a lesson up on the screen if you want to go back and watch that as a refresher if you don't know what caged is. But anyway, this is a G chord using the D shape. Now if I only play strings, and by the way, my middle finger and my index finger are up here on the 7th fret, strings 1 and 3, and then my ring finger's on the 8th fret, 2nd string. If I only played strings 2 and 3, or 3 and 2, it would sound like that. That's where that's coming from. It's just the kind of the bottom part of that triad from a shape perspective. And then I came up here and went. Now this is also coming out of a G triad. So I'm thinking about, I was going through the Rolodex of triads in my head when I was doing this. So there's your G chord here using the D shape, and then I came up here thinking about the G chord using the A shape, which looks like that. And if you play the top part of that, and I covered that in that lesson I just referred to, that cage lesson, So you've got this top part of that, which is a little triad there, top part of that chord shape. That's what I came up and played here. So I went, and to play that, I've got my pick on the 3rd string, and I'm using my ring finger to pluck the 1st string. So I'm just playing strings 1 and 3 for that part. And then my pinky goes down on the 12th fret 2nd string. And you can see I'm just making the G triad. So far we have, and by the way, this comes in, I should have mentioned this comes in on the and of 2. So when you're counting it out, when the jam track starts, you would count it like this. As soon as the music starts, you go 1 and 2 and. That's where you would start your first note. So it's 1 and 2 and. Okay, and then we go. Now that's where the song switches to the A minor. But I hung out on the G one extra little, it's not a full measure, but it's like an extra beat or two. So after I played that G triad, using the top part of the A shape here, then I came down like this. So I basically kept my index finger and my pinky in the same position that they are, and I just slid them down 2 frets, but I changed and I put my middle finger here on the 9th. So I lifted my ring finger and put my middle finger down on the 9th fret 3rd string. And what that is an A minor triad. So I went. So you can see everything we've done so far has just been chord shapes. There has not been any scales yet at all. I'm just going through the chords. That's a little tip for you to think about when it's your time to play a lead or a guitar part. I don't even know if you call this a lead. It's somewhere between rhythm and lead, but when you're coming up with a guitar part, try and complement the music. Listen to what's going on with the music. The music in this is so simple. There's not a lot to going on there. So I just wanted to make something that sounded pretty and kind of fit layered on top of it. And to me, chords are kind of the way to do that. So let's listen to this from the beginning. Okay, so the song stays on the A minor, and then after this triad, I came down and went. So let's look at this. All this is another A minor, so I went from this A minor down to this one. So that's where you bar the first 3 strings on the 5th fret. Thinking of your A minor using the E shape. That's all I was thinking about. But just to embellish that A minor and give it a little extra flair, I'm going to add my pinky here to the 7th fret 1st string and play this note with it. And that turns that into an A minor add 9. So that's adding a 9th. But I just think of that as an embellishment off of the A minor chord. So here's here's a little sidebar that some of you will appreciate. 2 ideas for when you're hanging out on a minor chord. One is this. And the other one is you can take whatever your minor chord triad is and you can slide it up this direction towards the body of the guitar 2 frets and back down. You can just do that and it pretty much always works. Like there's maybe a few exceptions where it doesn't, but that's for any of the triads. So I can take this A minor triad here and slide it up and down. So you've got that embellishment. You've got that one there, and then, that's 2. We're going to go through, I'll give you another one here towards the end of this. But anyway, so that's what we have. So we have, and what I'm doing is I'm picking the 3rd string, and I'm just using my fingers. You could use your pick for this if you want, but going down strings 1, 2, 3, 1, and then I lift my pinky, and we just go right back into that straight A minor triad. And then that's where the song switches to the D7. And so I get there ahead of the beat with my pinky there. And what I'm doing, what I'm picturing, let me show you the chord shape that I'm picturing here. I'm picturing this D7 triad, which is right here, because we're playing a D7. So, and the more comfortable you get with these chord shapes, this stuff happens a lot faster than you realize. You don't have to sit and plan it out. But from this A minor, and after I hit that, I came down and hit the third string because that's the note, that's the flat 7 that's in the D7. Okay, so that's what's gone on so far. So you can trace everything back to chord shapes. Now after that, we go into scale mode for just a moment here, and I played. And so this, it's just 3 notes, but I've got my ring finger on the 10th fret, 2nd string. Then I come down to the 7th fret, 2nd string. And while this note rings out, by the way, I let this note, I'll go ahead and play this note on top of it. So you have this kind of nice clash. I just thought that sounded nice. That's the 9th fret, 3rd string. And what this is this would be, this is going to make sense. I'll tie it all together here towards the end, but just know that these notes are coming from the G major scale. So those notes are just notes from that G major scale. Now some of you are going to say, well, you're playing over a D7. Why would you be playing the G major scale? I'll explain that in just a minute, but just know that I'm taking this one position of the G major scale. And by the way, this is a really important lesson. If you don't know your major scale, there's 5 positions, 5 main positions for playing the major scale. They happen to correlate with the notes from, or the chord shapes from Caged. C, A, G, E, D. You've got those 5 shapes that you can play your major scale from. I have a lesson where I go over those 5 shapes with practice material and everything. I'll put that on the screen now if you want to check it out. Okay, so remember the song is hanging out on the D7 chord. So we have that for the first part of it. Then I went. So this is just thinking of the D A shape, D chord using the A shape. So that's strings 3 and 2 from the 7th fret. And then I come down to the D7, the flat 7. And then the song goes back to the G. And what I played here was. So some of you will know, okay, if you're thinking about your G chord here using the E shape, you're going to know why strings 3 and 2 work, because they're just 2 notes from that bar chord. But you may be confused, what is that? Well, this would be like thinking about your G6 chord shape, or G13 if you're playing it like this. But it's basically this 6th note. You're adding the 6 out of the major scale, G major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, this note. You add it to another, to the 3rd interval of your scale. Anyway, that's what's going on here. I'm thinking about this little triad here, which is your G6, but I'm only playing strings 2 and 3. So you can see most of what I'm doing is just taking a triad and playing like 2 of the notes instead of 3. And then I come to this, which I just explained. Now watch this. The next thing I play goes. We went back into scale mode, and now that might have sounded complicated or seemed complicated, but all that happened chord-wise, if you listen to the jam track, is there was that D7 to the G, and this is walking up the G major scale again. Remember, I said there's only one scale we use. This is just another position of the G major scale, and I'm literally walking up the scale. So there's your G major scale. I'm just starting here on the 5th fret 3rd string. So we're going to go 5th fret 3rd string, 3rd fret 2nd string, 5th fret 2nd string. And let these notes ring out. Let them clash with each other. See what I'm doing there? Doesn't that sound good with that delay? And then we come up here to the 3rd fret 1st string, 5th fret 1st string, and then I'll explain this. So we have 6th fret 3rd string and 1st string, and then we slide that up to the 7th fret, same 2 strings. This is just a little harmonized 6 that I use all the time. You can think of these notes as being, that's our destination. This was just a half step down when we slid into our destination. Think of this as your G chord using the D shape, the one we started with. So I kind of went full circle and kind of came back to what we started with. So from this little walk up. Now again, I'm going to explain why that G major scale worked, even though it was a D7 chord we were playing over. But the G major scale works. We'll get to that in just a minute. Let's listen to all of this from the beginning up to that point. All right, so we've played through the entire composition once. Now we're going to loop through and play through it one more time, and I'll give you a new set of ideas. Let me first, though, play a little snippet of what we're about to learn so you can get that sound in your head, and then we'll talk it through. Okay, so I started with this. Now this is kind of an odd sound. It almost sounds a little off, and then it resolves. It's just a tension release. And so I've got my ring finger on the 15th fret 3rd string, and then my index finger on the 12th fret 1st string. And then we come to this position. But let's talk through this. What's going on here? Well, what I'm thinking about, remember we're playing over the G chord. I'm thinking about a C7 triad. So bear with me here. C7 like this. But I only played 2 strings. I only played strings 3 and 1. But why a C7? That's the bigger question here. Why would you play a C7 there? Well, I'm thinking about the old gospel thing where if you're hanging out on a chord, you can always go to the 4 chord of that chord and then back to that chord. It's just a common move. If you're hanging out on a chord, this is another little tip, kind of like we did with the minor chord, how you can slide it up 2 frets. Same kind of deal. If you're hanging out on a chord, you can go. It's just kind of a, it's kind of a, I think of it as gospel. I hear Elton John use that quite a bit in his piano style, which comes from a lot of gospel piano. It's really more like a gospel piano move. But anyway, I was thinking of that. And so I came up to the C7, which resolves nicely to the G. You can hear that tension and then release. So that's what we're starting with. String 3 and 1. And then I came up here. Now this would be ring finger on the 16th fret 3rd string, and then my middle finger on the 15th fret 2nd string. Now what are these 2 notes? Well, these 2 notes are, think of your G bar chord, just strings 2 and 3, like we did in the first, a minute ago, the first time through. So that's what I'm doing here. So we started with that, the C7, then we go to that, and then, so that's just barring the first 4 strings on the 12th fret. We play strings 2 and 3, and then strings 4 and 3. Now what is this? It's your G triad, and it comes from your A shape out of Cage. You can think of it that way, or the G shape. Same triad is shared between those 2 shapes. But that, again, I'm just taking 2 notes out of the triads instead of playing all 3. Hopefully you're starting to get some ideas like, oh, this is actually kind of simple. You just find triads and you just play 2 notes. It could be any 2, but you can get some really cool ideas from doing that. So, and then this is where it goes to the A minor. So I've just walked it up here, 14th fret 4th string, 12th fret 3rd string, 14th fret 3rd string, a quick slide up to the 16th fret 3rd string. Now, right here, I came back with my ring finger to the 14th fret 3rd string. Now watch this. Now this little stair step, so you have 14th fret 3rd string, 13th fret 2nd string, 12th fret 1st string. That is it's a minor triad. It's an A minor triad. Remember, the song only has 3 chords, so this is the A minor. So we played an A minor here, we played one here, and now we're playing one here. We're using all 3 minor triads. Here's a lesson if you're interested in more of that. I'll put that up on the screen where we go over the 3 main minor chord shapes. It's kind of like the cage system, but for minor chords. Okay, now this is a technique that is used quite a bit. I think of George Harrison when I hear this because he uses this in a lot of songs, and this works for major chords or minor chords. But here's the premise. You got to know how to do this, because this is another vamp that you can do, another embellishment when you're hanging out on a minor chord. Doesn't that sound cool? It works on any minor chord if you're hanging out on it for a while. So what we're doing is we're just taking this shape, the little stair step, but on that 3rd string, we're going to walk it down 12th fret, or 13th fret, 12th fret, 11th fret. This note just walks down while the other 2 notes stay the same. So watch this. Now I had to reposition my fingers to make it work. But you can see that these 2 notes are just the same. And all this is this is the 1 of the chord. That's your A. And you're going to walk it down. So if we were to play that using a different triad, like let's say we were playing it here. Now this is going to sound familiar. Check this out. So I don't want to go any further than that, for copyright reasons. But the same walk down, it's taking that 1 and walking it down. Now, if you're playing a major chord, you could do the same thing. And what you're playing there is the major chord, then you have your major 7, your dominant 7. Same kind of vibe, but it's just taking the 1 and walking it down a few notches. There's a name for that. If somebody can think of the name of that, leave it in the comments. I forget what that's called. There's actually a name for that technique. But anyway, George Harrison, it's in just a lot of his stuff, especially like kind of late in the Beatles' career and early, like when he did All Things Must Pass. You can hear that in a lot of his musical arrangements. Okay, so that's what I did. I just walked it down. Now the last thing we're going to play here, this last little thing, is where the song goes back to the D7 chord, the 5 chord, and I played this. This is just a walk down, and this is something that you can do for any scale. I'm playing the G major scale, but I'm doing a pattern. And scales and patterns go together really nicely. I'm going to do a future lesson on just scale patterns because there's so many really cool ones. But this one, you can see what I'm doing is if we were to walk straight down the scale, it sounds like that, right? See, it's just G major scale. But if we go like this, you go down a step and then back a step, down a further step, back a step, down a step, back a step. That's what this is. This is a great way to practice your scales as well. You can keep going with it. And this is all coming from this G chord using the C shape, which I covered in that lesson that I talked about, the lesson on playing your major chord in all 5 positions. But the important thing is, the big thing is, we're playing this over a D7 chord. Why is that working? Well, remember, if we think back to our modes, if you take the 1 chord, in this case our G major chord, and you play it over the 5 chord, which is what we're doing, we're playing it over the D7, you're actually playing D mixolydian. So when I'm playing the G major scale and there's a D chord behind it, I'm actually playing D mixolydian. So that's kind of cool. If you're ever playing a song and you're on the 5 chord, you can just play the major scale of the chord that is the 1 chord, or the chord of the key of the song, and it will be Mixolydian mode for that 5 chord. Some of you are like, what the heck are you talking about? Anyway, if you don't know what that is, you can just skip it. That's a thing in modes, which I'll put the lesson up on the screen if you want to learn more about modes. That's actually the part 2 to that other lesson of learning the major scale in all 5 positions. But that's what's going on there, is this pattern. I came down to here, which is the 7th fret, 4th string, and I did a quick pull off with my middle finger to the 8th fret. And then we slid down into this, which would be like your G major pentatonic. So it's the pull off there, down to the 5th fret on the 4th string, 7th fret, 5th string. There's a hammer on between the 5th fret and 7th fret. And then we landed on that G note, which is the 5th fret, 4th string. And then one final little embellishment. And that's, I'm thinking about chord shapes again. I'm thinking about the A shape here. Playing strings 4 and 2 out of that A shape. Slide that down 2 frets. And then down to this shape, which is again another G chord using the C shape at this time. But I'm playing strings 4 and 2. So, and that's how I ended it. Now the song would repeat, the jam track would repeat, and you'd go through all of it again. Let me back up and I'll play through all of it one last time, just so you have one final reference. And then remember, if you're not a premium member, I would encourage you to look into it because I have 10 years worth of in-depth lessons like this. Lots of styles. We have country, we have blues, we have all the good kind of root stuff, and a lot of practical information so that you can just hopefully take 1-2 ideas out of this lesson and you start plugging it into whatever you do. All right, we'll back up and play through this one more time, and then we'll see you next week for something new.